All right, we're recording now. So welcome everybody to another ASEA Global Expansion Team Zoom. We have the amazing James Yate. He's a professional trainer in the industry, actually took some time off to become a father and to dedicate his life to raising his young son for 4 years. So all of those parents out there can appreciate that. The child has 2 parents raising him. So it's the way it should be done, right? So James, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And I know we've just got a half an hour and you could fill our brains with all kinds of things. But tonight we're going to really specifically focus on duplication and the importance of that. So I'll hand it over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I really appreciate it. And it's so great to see everyone on. And I know I got to spend some time with you as we were just trying to work out maybe about a year ago, but it's a pleasure to be back with you. And what a beautiful time it is in the world to be able to make a real impact as well. As Cindy mentioned, just as a side note very quickly, I've spent the last 4 years as a stay-at-home dad, and boy, does that give you perspective in terms of how great this profession can be if you truly are willing to work hard at it. And today I want to talk to you about a topic which really allowed for that to happen, because without the word duplication, I would probably still be working my backside off. And so I want to talk to you today about how to maximize your results, how to get massive duplication in your business. But I want to give you a little bit of a lead into that of why this is so important and how it can really make an impact before I give you some tips and tools as well in order to be able to do that. Now, I know you've got the chat box available and I'm going to ask for you to participate today. Always love a good amount of participation. So if you can hear me loud and clear, if you can understand me, let me know in the comments by dropping the word yes. The reason I say that is I was in South Africa a few years ago and I spoke for about an hour and a half from stage, and everyone said, James, that was the best presentation we've heard, but we didn't understand a word you said, right? So always want to make sure that we are all on. Fantastic. No, that's great. So look, I guess a little bit of an insight to the word duplication. You know, my first 5 years in this profession, I went from failure to failure with a lot of enthusiasm, but I didn't get the results. And the reason I didn't get results was because I really didn't understand how to replicate myself. I used to try to reinvent the wheel. I used to try to do all of these cool things. I was always in the engine room, but I never found ways that would allow me to create the results that would give us long-lasting success. And the reason being is, and I put this up on the board to start with today, is because I was in an emotional-based level of production for a lot of my first 5 years. And I want to talk about this as a really important thing to focus in on. You know, there's 2 types of performance. There's 2 types of production when it comes to building our business here with ASEA. Number 1 is emotional production. Emotional production is when you wake up and you've got a lot of energy and you're feeling really, really good, you're going to pick up the phone, you're going to contact people, and you're just going to go crazy because you feel so good about what you have in your hands. On the days where you get a few rejections, the emotion also can kick in, and we often go into the witness protection program. It's like, oh, I'm going to take the rest of the day off because I'm not necessarily feeling it. Or if you wake up and you're a little bit low on energy, sometimes that happens as well. Now, to be honest, after over 20 years in this industry, as a trainer and also building in the field, I can tell you that I would say 90% of people I worked with were emotional producers. And there's nothing wrong with it, but you need to become aware of it if you are one of those people. I would love for you, and this is a safe space, drop in the comments if you feel like you're a bit of an emotional producer. You kind of like work really hard when you feel like it, when it feels good, but you don't work that hard when you don't feel too good, when the energy is a little bit low. You see, what's really important is to separate the emotion from the action, and obviously the action from the outcome as well. And what we need to look at here is how do we get, rather than being in the emotional production piece, well, how do we get into that permanent protocol production so that even if we wake up not feeling necessarily our best, we're still getting a bare minimum done, which can duplicate the results with our team, because the speed of the leader determines the speed of the pack. And often we're trying to get our teams to be moving and enrolling, but it comes back to us. They are watching what we are doing at every single move. And so when it comes to these 2 conversations, awareness is key to transformational change. So for the first point, and some of you have already said, yes, that's me. I can see myself in that emotional state. It's really good just to be honest with yourself and say, am I currently a permanent protocol producer, or am I an emotional producer? If I'm an emotional producer, what could I possibly do in order to be able to shift to permanent protocol production? Do I need to work on my mindset? Do I need to work on my systems? Do I need to work on something that's going to make this easy? Because when we're trying to do something different for the first time, those hardwired habits are going to kick in and try to override everything. We use our logic and our intent to make decisions based on circumstances that we are confronted with. So for example, I always use the saying, event plus response equals outcome. So if we are becoming aware even on this call that we need to make a change, it's our response mechanism that's going to either make this easy or hard. And our response mechanism is about 90% of the game. And so by just having the awareness initially or how we're going to respond to when we get told, hey, listen, maybe we are emotional builders and we need to do something about it, that's going to start to help you in the future because you're going to be able to find a roadmap moving forward. If this is making sense, drop the word sense in the comments. Now, when it comes to the permanent protocol production, how do we actually get there and stay there? Well, there's two key things. We've got to look at systems because systems are what duplicate our businesses. And so at the end of the day, if you look at all of the great levels of duplication that we see across this entire profession, it's the simplest of systems that make the greatest results happen. And the key at the moment, especially in 2021, I mean, we've gone through a very interesting year where I think a lot of us have just grown in terms of awareness of a lot of stuff around the world, but awareness in terms of, duplication is not just now about what we do in terms of our sales process. It's in terms of how we show up in the world that needs to be duplicated as well. So there's a personal component, a personal performance component we need to look at. And there's also a professional component. The personal component are things like our morning routines, things like our behaviors. How do we shift from a behavior that's not been serving us to a behavior that has been serving us? How do we shift from into the professional state from a system that might be 15 steps to a system that's only 5 steps? And so the simpler that we can keep this conversation happening, the easier it's going to be able to build a business that not only gets passed on and effectively to our level 1 and level 2, but goes way beyond that. I mean, I remember as a kid, we call this a different game in different parts of the world, but I remember as a kid, we used to play broken telephone, right? I'd whisper to a kid something and then they would whisper it to someone else and eventually go around the circle and it would come back completely different. Well, often that's because the message was so complex to begin. And even if it was a simple message, often it got really complicated. And the same happens here when we're trying to replicate training with our level 1, level 2, all of a sudden, by the time it gets to level 5, we're literally like, oh my gosh, no one knows what they're doing. And the reason for that is because the systems become too complicated. So today, what I want to do is I want to share with you a couple of key systems that can allow for maximum duplication in your business. And if you keep it this simple, it's actually going to probably duplicate the fastest as well. But keep in mind, the starting point to all of this conversation today is awareness is key to transformational change. Are we here or are we here? If we're here, how do we optimize it? If we're here, how do we get over to this side? Okay, so I'm going to pass this on to the next page now, and we're going to go into this massive duplication. Now, the reason that I came up with this, and this focus, was it was back in probably 2006, 2007. And I was at the Sheraton Hotel in Sydney, and I was building a fitness business and I was building a network marketing business side by side. And so I was using the gym there to train, met a beauty therapist. Long story short, I was working with a product, this is many years ago, and she said, my sister would love this, and she lived in Romania. The market wasn't open in Romania. This girl literally couldn't speak a word of English. And I went, oh my gosh, this is a fun challenge. I'm going to see how I'm going to go about this. And this is before Google Translator worked effectively as well. Does anyone remember those days? You know, when you type in hello in Google Translator and like it didn't even convert hello, right? This is back then. And so this lady, Diana, her name was, over in Romania, we eventually worked out how to communicate like very, very touch and go. You know, she couldn't speak my language, I couldn't speak hers, but we were able to get a clear message across. And what I realized is that in the first week when I started speaking with her, everything I was trying to train her on was completely way too complicated. I had like a 10-step getting started system. I had a 15-step daily action plan. I had many things that didn't have any steps. And she was confused, completely confused. And then I realized something that really came to me. I have to keep this so simple that she's going to remember everything I tell her on one hand. And from that point onwards, for the next 15 years, every single system that I have taught either my teams or the industry have been like that, 5 steps or less. In fact, there's only 2 systems that I teach that are 6 steps, the rest are 5 or less. So I'm going to talk to you about what happened. So I'm just going to bring this forward so you can see this a little bit, but I had Diana up here. And well, let's say this was me, right? James. And I had Diana here. And I started working with her and I started talking to her about exactly what she would need to do on a day-to-day basis in order to be able to build a business. We talked about how to sort of taproot her network, right? How to take one person to tens and tens of people. How many of you, drop in the comments, how many of you would love to enroll one person and drive that line 20 levels deep? I mean, that's the ultimate goal when it comes to duplication, right? But often we see it as this, nice to have rather than a reality check. Like often it's like, oh yeah, it would be nice, but the reality is I'm only going to get a couple of layers deep. So I can see all of you are saying, oh yeah, well, let me show you exactly what happened. So I enrolled Diana, and then she enrolled a few people, and one of these was Camilla. And this lady, Camilla, then, basically drove that line. And after only a couple of weeks, it went 17 levels deep. 17 levels deep. Why? Because I taught her 5 steps. I taught Diana 5 steps. I taught Camilla 5 steps. And I taught each person on how to duplicate this so effectively that they were able to do it in their sleep. In fact, some of them had young kids and their kids were able to duplicate this as well. Like it was that easy and simple. And then I realized something. The first 5 years in my career was just way too complicated. I went from failure to failure with enthusiasm because my vision was greater than my largest challenge. So I stuck in there. But the reality is if I stayed on that path, I would have never got the results. I had to simplify this whole thing. So today, let's talk about how we can simplify the duplication process, but from 2 areas, personal performance and business performance. You see, if we don't duplicate the personal performance, what happens is we're trying to get, a majority of the world right now is in fight or flight. I mean, would you agree? Just drop the word agree in the comments. Would you agree most people at the moment are in some form of stress? Whether it's financial stress, whether it's fear based on what's going on in the world, whether it's the fact that they're just not, living to their highest potential. Most people right now are in a high level of stress. Now, when we're in high levels of stress, that fight or flight mechanism kicks in, or fight, flight, or freeze. Now, some people fight, right? So it's literally like we just go all in and it's literally just fighting against the machine. And sometimes people will hustle their way to the top based on being in chronic stress, but using that as their output. Some people will go into flight. It's like sort of a reaction mechanism, right? So basically it's like, oh my gosh, trying to get out of situations all the time. And freeze is like literally they stand still. Now, if you're trying to build a team that is in a situation where they're personally in fight, flight, or freeze, and you're trying to tell them that they just need to make 10 more calls, most of them are going to freeze, or they're going to fight against you, or they're going to literally get out of there and you're never going to hear from them again. We need to have this common conversation as a common conversation now in this industry much more, because your productivity and your success relies on the performance, personal performance of your team. So that's the first system we need to look at. So as I said, I'm going to give you 2 systems today, a personal performance system, and the number 1 is the morning routine. And I'm going to drive this quickly because I want to get to the business stuff as well, but I cannot skip over this anymore. I mean, when Cindy and I were speaking about duplication, I mean, it's the first thing that comes to mind. It's when I'm in the presentations around the world that people go, oh my gosh, this changed my life. So I just want to give you a little hack today. And I know when we spoke about a year ago, we spoke about some of the personal performance areas. But I just want to give you a hack that can change the game. So here's the thing. 99% of people, the real stat is 86, but it feels like 99. 86% of people are reaching for one of these things every single morning when they're still in bed. 50% of the people that reach for their phone are doing it before they say good morning to their spouse that's lying next to them. Why is that an issue? Number 1, it's an addiction. What's that doing to people's performance? Well, let me explain. What it does is it puts you in fight or flight immediately. Because as you start to look at your emails coming through and all of the texts and all of the fear of loss because you can't even get to all the messages in time, cortisol raises. What happens when cortisol raises? We start to perform at a much lower capacity. In fact, the frontal part of the brain switches off very, very quickly to get us out of scenarios that don't serve us. So before we've even got out of bed, we're stressed. Now what happens is then someone throws a scenario at us and it's not serving us. Let's say our kids are all of a sudden feeling a certain way and now we react to that, or we're in the car and now someone cuts us off in the traffic, we react to that. We get to the office, we react to if there's a boss there, or maybe there's someone at a presentation that you thought was going to join and they don't. And when you're in that state, we create these patternings, these stories over and over again. And I say, Cindy, you wouldn't believe what happened to me today, right? And so we become victim to our circumstances. Now, if we want a high-performing team that duplicates, we've got to remember that energy drives duplication. And if people are lacking energy first thing in the morning, they're not going to duplicate. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the concept of MBI. I'm going to remind us every single time we get on a call about these 3 steps. Move, breathe, intentions. Move, breathe, intentions. Over and over and over again. So what's the optimal routine? Well, I haven't got an hour and a half to talk to you about every single piece today, but what I have got you is 3 steps that I can really help you to optimize immediately. Number 1, tech-free, first 2 hours in the morning, last 2 hours at night. This will be challenging for most people because it's become an addiction. Our dopamine, one of our happy hormones, is based on anticipation and reward. We anticipate something's on the phone, so we reach for it. What if you could put this in another room? What if you could wake up differently? What if you could wake up and actually have a conversation with your spouse before you actually say hello to Facebook? And what if instead of doing that, we do MBI, moving for 20 minutes, breathing for 10 minutes, intentions for 5 minutes, moving, breathing, intentions. Moving for 20 minutes, just to a light jog, gets your lymphatic system moving, gets rid of a lot of sweat, lots of toxins, right? Which is really, really important. Secondly, most importantly, it raises dopamine and endorphins naturally. So it puts us into a state where we're now increasing happiness and increasing energy. Now, if we want a high-performing team that duplicates, imagine every single person in the team. Imagine your entire team now is waking up as a high performer. They've got a mindset that's completely different. Then we go into breathing. 10 minutes of even meditation, mindfulness, some form of breath work can shrink our control center, our amygdala in our brain. And within a few moments, we are instead of like that, literally the studies show 8 weeks of meditation for 10 minutes a day can do this. But in a few moments, instead of there being a snake on the ground and you're going, you're looking at the snake going, hang on, that's a stick, and you're not reacting. Why is that good? Because when someone calls you up and says, I'm not interested in joining your business, and you thought they were, you're not going to react anymore. You're going to be completely calm about it, right? So this is where it goes. And then the final piece is the intentions. The intentions are based on you future pacing your success at the beginning of the day. So we're moving for 20 minutes. We're doing 10 minutes of breath work, meditation, some form of mindfulness. And then we go into 5 minutes of setting our intentions, something like this. If it's 6 a.m., we say something like, it's 7 p.m., I've contacted 10 people about my business and I feel great. We lock in the emotional attachment to the intention. We set about 3 to 5 intentions at the beginning of the day. And by saying them as if we've already done them, it links our neurons and we start to future pace our success. We're actually already seeing ourselves there before we've done it. If this is helpful, drop the word helpful in the comments. This is the first system out of the 2. Now, if we get this right, then the next thing's just going to flow, right? This is absolutely going to flow for us. If we don't do this, then we get back into the fight or flight scenario where I'm trying to teach you a business system and everyone's like fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, so now what we do is we go into the second thing. And by the way, there is so much more we can do with this. Maybe Cindy, another time we can actually do a whole focus on that point as well. But again, that's number 1, that's the tick. Number 2 is called System 5. System 5, I'd like you to write this down. Now, System 5 is your daily method of operation. We all have many different ways to do this. I mean, I know people like Cindy and Buck and a lot of, the guys in the team here, Dan, have all been in business for a long period of time. And we all have a certain method of operation down pat and it works for us. But what if we could duplicate 5 steps or less that allows us to truly optimize our success in our business within only a few moments every single day? And what if we could teach that to our team? Well, System 5 is broken into the 5 income producing activities. So number 1 is your contact list. I'm just going to say it so that we can get through this quickly. So Janice says, what does the intention mean? It means you're setting the intent for accomplishing particular things in that day. So you do your moving, you do your breathing, and then you set your intentions for what you want to accomplish for that day. That can be business accomplishments, it could be personal. You might just want to spend more time with your kids. You would say something like, it's 6 p.m. and I've spent a whole day with my kids and I feel great, right? So we're putting the intentions in play. Going to System 5 now. Very, very important conversation to have because it flows directly on from the morning routine. It's almost like once you've done your morning routine, you're now ready to clock on for business. And number 1 is your contact list. I'll just write contact. Number 2, can you see that on the board? Yeah. Number 2 is invite. Number 3 is share. Number 4 is follow up. I'll just put F up, follow up. And number 5 is enroll. And remind me, US uses 2 L's for enroll, right? Rather than 1. I think we're 1 L in here and it's okay, good. Okay, your concept here, and you probably need to go down a little bit more, there you go. Contact list, invite, share, follow up, and enroll. So the concept with this here is when we're actually doing this activity on a daily basis, we remember that it happens in a synergistic order. So I love the quote, systems are duplicatable, tools are interchangeable. So what I mean by that is that the system is the order in which we do something. It never changes. But, you know, Sia might bring out some pretty amazing videos and new products, and, you know, the whole tool keeps changing, it keeps developing, it keeps being innovated, but it will always be shared at the same step, which is step number 3, which is the share, right? We're not going to share something to someone that we don't know anything about. We're going to find out a little bit about them first. So the concept here is I want to give you a few hacks here for the next 10 minutes that could allow you to maximize, maybe even relaunch your business using System 5. And this is where maximum duplication kicks in. Why does it kick in? Number 1, let's summarize. It's simple. Number 2, it's income producing. Number 3, it also generates more energy for your business. So just like MBI generates energy for your life, System 5 generates energy for your business. And if you're in a situation, and this is a little bit of an awareness conversation, if you're out there and you're doing things that deplete your energy and you become aware of it, ask yourself, why am I still doing it? If you find things that can top your energy up, then keep going. Find things to optimize it even further. These are 2 things that might be able to help you with that. So here's the little hack. When I get anyone started in any type of thing, right, whether it's a traditional business, whether it's network marketing, whether it's, you know, literally someone's just setting up a business from scratch for the first time, but they need to identify, you know, how to get their business going. I'm not a guy that does like a 200 list thing, right? I do something very, very simple. A list of 10 and a list of 10. Now, I know you've got something similar to this, right? But I'm just going to share this and break this open. So I basically say, who are the 10 people that you like and trust the most on one list? Who are the 10 people that are the most influential people that you know on the other list? And the reason being is that the influential people are like, you have the ability to be able to sponsor up and find people more successful than you. And the people that like and trust you, they're going to be great consumers. They're going to be people that are going to listen to you. They're going to be minimum a consumer, but often they're going to listen to you and say, hey, listen, I want to do what you're doing. It's important we start with 10 and 10. Where we are in the world in 2021 is that we have a global attention deficit issue. We can't focus on things for more than a few seconds. So if we're getting people to focus on lists of 10 rather than lists of 200, we're going to be more effective up front. What happens is behind the scenes, we go and build the master list. And the master list is where we basically are feeding all of the contacts to the 2 working lists. So every single day when you get ready to go to work and you're like, right, it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock and I'm going to start working now on my business. It's like, who are the people on the 2 lists I've got in front of me? Number 1, the influential people. Number 2, the people I like and trust the most. And if they're empty, I go back to my master list and I bring the next contacts across from my master list to my 2 working lists. If this is making sense, drop the word sense in the comments. Little hack for the mindset. The reason that this is important is that we want to make sure that 80% of our time is focused in this area. This is green time, right? Income producing, as opposed to red time, which is like your admin, your management, trying to get your team to build. Remember, the green time is what the team are going to see you do. The speed of the leader determines the speed of the pack. Most of the time I work with leaders, any type of leader, like even someone that's just got started in a business, often it's the other way around. It's like 20, 80, 20% of the time on their business, 80% on their team. Go the other way around. Watch what happens to the duplication of your business. Absolutely vital that we focus on that green time. The second piece is you know how to invite better than I do in terms of your business. You know all of your selling points. But remember that people don't care what you know till they know that you care. Inviting people to take a look at something by you knowing where their pain points are is the greatest possible thing you can do. We're in a world right now where social media is obviously the greatest leverage point in the world. I've been using it since 2005 to build my business. My little claim to fame with enrollments was I used LinkedIn to enroll over 500 people personally over the years, which led to thousands of people around the world. And the reason that it worked was because I never, ever, ever pitched my business online. I always built this relationship, got them offline, and spoke about how we could explore synergies between our backgrounds. And it always led to a result because people are always open based on the trust that we had built up front. So contact list, 10 and 10, invite, ask them whether they're open to taking a look at something new. Then we get to the share. And I want to share one final thing today about the share, and that is a little hack that I've used for a few years. By the way, I know this is being recorded. Watch this back a few times if you need, because we're going through a lot of content here so that you can get the maximum result in the shortest period of time. The share, I'm just going to bring it up here. is the 30, 30, 30, 10 rule. The 30, 30, 30, 10 rule. 30% is relationship and rapport building. So if I have John say to me, James, I'm open to hearing what you have, before I send him a presentation or before I get him onto a weekly webinar or before I do any of that, I'm going to find a little bit more out about that person and make sure that I have that conversation, which gets to know his pain points even further. If I say, John, what actually brought you here to have a look at a seer? And he says, James, you know what? I'm currently at the moment, I'm working massive hours and I'm not getting a break. I'm looking for another income stream. Instead of me going, oh, that's great, I say, so what other options have you looked at, John? What has been the reason that you've got to this point, and why haven't you jumped on this before? The more I know about John, the easier it's going to be able to bridge the gap between where he is and where he wants to be, knowing that a seer can bridge the gap and be the vehicle for him to get to his goals. The next 30% of your time is sharing the information. There's a reason that TED Talks are 18 minutes or less. So we've got to make sure we get the most important information out in 18 minutes. Hey, listen, the presentation might go for an hour, but make sure that the key point is like kind of, in the middle there, 18 minutes straight to the point. The final 30% of the share is by, really bridging the gap between where he is and where he wants to be and seeing whether a seer can basically get in there. And the final 10% is the open or the close. In sales, we call it the close. In networking, we call it the open because this is the starting point to when we get to work with someone. So it's not the end of a sale, it's the beginning of a journey. And I just want to give you 4 key questions to finish off today that will help you to maximize your results from here. How many of you would like to know how to close effectively, straight to the point, keeping the relationship intact without really pushing anyone, but knowing that you can duplicate this with your team? And by the way, drop the word following in the comments if you're still following me, because we're giving you a lot of information in a short period of time. I want to make sure that we are clear on this. Massive duplication requires massive systems and massive action. Okay, great. Thanks so much for all jumping in. So number 1, the first question to ask at the end of a presentation, whether it's product or business, is this made sense to me? Does it make sense to you? That's the first question. It made sense to me. Does it make sense to you? Number 2, what did you love the most about what you saw today? And the reason that we do this is because firstly, when we say, does it make sense to me? Does it make sense to me? Does it make sense to you? It's the logical brain thinking. They're saying, yeah, it kind of makes sense. But then we bring them into their heart space, which is where they're going to make a lot of intuitive based decisions. So, what did you love the most about this? All of a sudden now they're feeling the connection. Number 3, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you want to get out of the room right now and never talk to me again, and 10 being you want to get moving, you want to get started, where do you fit on the scale? Right? On the scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you're out of here, 10 being you want to get started, where do you fit on the scale? And number 4, on a scale, so now I know your scale, so now I know you're a 7. It's basically like, what do you need from me in order to support you to get from a 7 to a 10? So I'm going to go through those questions again. Number 1, it made sense to me. Does it make sense to you? Number 2, what did you love the most about what you saw? Number 3, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you fit on the scale? 1 being you want to get out of here, 10 being you want to get started. And if there are 7, you say, what do you need to do in order to get from a 7 to a 10? Or what do you need from me in order to support you to get from a 7 to a 10? What you can measure, you can improve. What you can measure, you can improve. If you can't measure something, you can't improve it. And Gabby said, what was the second one? What did you love the most about what you saw? And the most important piece with all of this thing here is, at the end of that question, if it's a yes, if it's a 10, they're going to get started. You know how to get them started with the best possible pack, right? If they're no, then we ask them for some referrals. And 90% of our enrollments over the years came from referrals from other people. And then the final piece, if it's a follow-up, we book another meeting and we show them the information that they need to have before that meeting. And in that meeting, that final follow-up meeting, we ask them the same 4 questions again, remembering that the average person will enroll in a SEER somewhere between the 5th and the 12th exposure. Sometimes we have to do 5 to 12 meetings or 5 to 12 exposures to be able to get them to go. And that's just a stat for the whole industry, but I'm just relating it back to you. So if you summarize everything I've spoken about today, number 1, are you a permanent protocol producer or are you an emotional producer? If you want to be optimizing the permanent protocol production, where no matter how you feel, you still get to work, you still get things done, you need systems. Number 1, we need a personal performance-based system. The reason that we need that is because that's going to generate energy. So no matter what's thrown at us, we're out of the fight or flight response and we're into a space of generating more productivity just from feeling good. And number two, we need a system such as System 5. So when we get to work, we know exactly the 5 steps we're going over after again and again and again, because these will lead to the ultimate level of success. And that, my friends, is how you duplicate a business in only 30 minutes. So I hope that's been able to give you some value from today. If you've gained any value, let us know into the comments. Maybe your biggest takeaway, drop the word value as well. And I look forward to breaking this open further for you at some stage soon. But in the meantime, I really appreciate the opportunity just to be here with you. And it's so funny, I got here, I was like, I'm just going to talk System 5. And I thought, nah, you know what? I just want to give you the real perspective here, because the reality is that one doesn't work without the other. So thank you so much, Cindy. I really appreciate it. And I hopefully that helped as well.
So helpful, James. And I love what you teach, because the more systematized you are, the less emotional you'll be, right? Because you're just following a system and you're not taking everything so personally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much, James. Really appreciate it. Always a pleasure to have you on. And we'll go back and listen to the recording so that we can really drill this into our brains and practice to get this simple system down, so that we can enroll more people and we can manifest Virtus's vision. So thanks, James, and good night, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night. Thanks. Talk soon.
Thanks, buddy. Good on you.